the darkness that passed on, I began to learn where it was and what great event it was that we all came from, which was the Armenian genocide, which even though we didn't live and we didn't see ourselves, was somehow transmitted down to us from generation to generation, from my great-grandfather to my grandfather, from my grandfather to my father, from my father to me. And I think the meaning and legacy of that genocide is probably transformed over the course of these generations, but it still remains very much relevant as to who we are. And it is relevant particularly because the government of Turkey continues to deny the genocide. I think if that denial wasn't there, if there was some sort of attempt to make peace or recognition, maybe the fire wouldn't burn in the way it does, or as strongly as it does, or as aggressively as it does. But for us, this isn't a dead issue. It's not something that happened 100 years ago. It's something that has political relevance today, that is being denied today, and that is today serving as the blueprint for more genocides that are happening across the world. We sort of track the invisible influence of history of 3 generations of my family, starting with my great-grandfather Kaspat, who survived the genocide having watched the murder of his family, and tracked his immigration to the United States, to the San Joaquin Valley of California. It continued with the story of my grandfather, who was born on a farm in the San Joaquin Valley of California, who was born in a very Americanized kind of society, but who had inside of him an inkling that he had to pursue, which is that he had to discover what it was that his father escaped from. My grandfather, Richard, became, one of the pioneers of Armenian studies in the United States. He dedicated his life to sort of uncovering and unearthing the hidden history of Armenia, and he ultimately wrote the entire history and created the discipline in which we study genocide, in which we study the First Republic of Armenia and so many other Armenian events. My father also had this sense of burden and this sense of mission on his shoulders, and he spent his life actually repatriating, moving back to Armenia and serving there as Armenia's foreign minister and helping to make Armenia a democratic society. So I think both of their lives have been defined by the ghosts of whether that's the Armenian genocide or whether that's the Armenian future which they serve. Armenian is what I am, and sometimes as an artist what you have to do is, instead of pursuing the themes and the topics and the intrigues that you find cool or fashionable, you have to look in your own backyard, you have to look in your own house, and you have to look in your own soul, and you have to tell the stories that are yours, that are actually yours, and the stories that you can tell better than anybody else. So I began to write and think and make films about Armenian themes as well, to the extent that they were native to me, and I believed I could say something new about them. My family's story was about 3 men who left. My great-grandfather left the ruins of his homeland. My grandfather left his father's farm. My father left the wonders of an American life. The family story, I believed, was about prodigal sons, which is to say, men who ruled over their own destinies. There's a secret buried about this mysterious connection with what happened in the past 100 years ago and how that came to life again 100 years later. This represents the mind map, maybe, of the Armenian people, and how we're all kind of, many of us anyway, are obsessed with our past, and how the past and the present seem to entangle in very powerful ways. Creative Armenia is an arts foundation for the Armenian people that I founded 3 years ago now, that discovers, develops, and champions creative talent in film, music, and across all the arts. And it's a mechanism that aims to instigate and inspire creative visions from Armenians and to put Armenian culture back on the map. So Creative Armenia also marks that bridge from survival to creation. Imagine more bravely, more completely, and more ambitiously, then the reality will catch up to that. First it needs to be imagined, and that connects to the movie I'm Not Alone in the Revolution. The government was ruled by corrupt and wealthy people who had ignored their population for so long. And the people lived in poverty, and they had no hope, and they didn't imagine a good future for themselves or their children. One day, some guy decided that he wanted to change all of that. And he went on Facebook Live, and he said, I have a plan. I'm going to walk across this country, I'm going to inspire the people, and within 40 days we're going to bring down the most powerful government this country's ever known. And everybody mocked him, and everybody thought that was ridiculous, except he began to walk, and one person joined him, a second person joined him, and this group of people walked across the country, and within a few weeks the country had exploded. That man had became Prime Minister of the Republic of Armenia, having accomplished together with the people one of the most miraculous revolutions of modern times. Before he even sets out on the revolution, deciding that he wants to write a poem. This revolution begins with a man writing a poem, and in this poem saying,
Ես անում եմ իմ քայլը։ Ես անում եմ իմ քայլը այսօր։ Սա հույսի արկայծող ճանապարհ է։ Սա գրվող պատմություն է մի նոր։ Ես պարտվել եմ քանիցս ու տեսել քմծիծաղը ստի, բայց իմ կամքը ամուր է քարիցել, իմ ոգին հանձնվել չգիտի։
Հայաստանի Հանրապետությունում սկսել է ժողովրդական թավշյա ոչ բռնի հեղափոխություն։
Եվ մենակ չեմ։
We're here because we're premiering a film which tells the story of a revolution that happened in the spring of 2018 in Armenia, where the Armenian people took to the streets and exploded. We're here to celebrate the victory and hope that it becomes the example of other people as they fight for their own freedom. You are not alone. You are not alone. When you're struggling, when everyone's mocking you, when everything seems lost, when hope is nowhere to be found, you are not alone, and victory is closer than you think.